All right, now, if you are a resident of Johannesburg, you probably are familiar with the water woes that we've had in the city over the last 2 weeks. In fact, many areas in South Africa's economic capital being left with dry taps, and this, of course, due to a number of reasons. We saw a meeting with the Executive Mayor Kabila Kwamanda and his councillors taking place earlier this week. And many residents of Johannesburg still wondering what exactly is going on. And the latest on that front, of course, we see that officials now warning that the system is under strain as demand is outstripping supply. Now, to find out more about this, we're speaking to Craig Sheridan of the University of the Witwatersrand, and he is here to speak to us just a little bit more about the situation. And of course, he is also the director of the Center in Water Research and Development. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us.
Good afternoon, and good afternoon to all your viewers and listeners.
All right, so it's been a week of horror, or dare I say 2 weeks, for many residents in Johannesburg, but it's not the first time that we're seeing this having happened. It's a regular occurrence, unfortunately, and I'm sure experts like yourselves are now looking into what's going on and hopefully, looking towards some solutions for us. But just before this most recent water outage, which I believe began during the first week of March, uh, on the 27th of February, you wrote an article explaining why Johannesburg suffers a water crisis. Are you surprised at what's just happened?
Yes and no. And it's a double answer. And the reason it's a double answer is the yes is the possibility of someone leaving a valve closed for such a length of time under such difficult conditions. That's not something I could have predicted. It's not something I think any of us could have predicted, and it should not be happening. But in terms of the systems currently being under strain, like you said a minute ago, I'm not surprised. And this is not going to change a lot. It will get slightly better as the cooler months come. But I think we're in for a rough few years for a number of different reasons.
I mean, when you say a rough few years, that doesn't sound too good, right? Um, but when we have water interruptions on the scale that we've had in Johannesburg lately, and with
Mm.
the frequency that we've had it, can you maybe just delve into the consequences and implications this might have for people on the end of the system? Those of us
Yeah.
who now have to drink that water, the quality of that water, are there any implications for that?
There are implications in terms of quality. So as the water starts to flow again, that first flash of water, there's no real control over that quality. And part of the reason for that is we know our pipes are leaking. We have a large quantity of water that's leaked through our reticulation infrastructure. It's somewhere in the order of probably 25 to 30% of the water that's given to us is leaking through our pipes. So really what's happening now is when those pipes go empty, that water pressure that's in the pipe is continuously squirting out the pipe. And now it's not there anymore. So anything that's on the outside of the pipe can start coming into the pipe. So what that means is that first flash of water that's coming down the pipe towards you, it's probably not of such a high quality. And primarily because we just wouldn't know what was in that because of what's in the actual system itself. So the implications are there for the first flash, and they're real. And it's one of my recommendations is that when your water is returned and you've got air flowing through it and it's going like psh, psh, as it opens up again, wait a little while after the air bubbles have stopped coming through your tap. And that's typically like a minute. And I would also suggest you keep that water because it's perfectly good for gardening or for watering vegetables or things. But try not to drink that first flash of water because that's the one that we have no control over. What's behind that first flash should be, as I say, what's coming from Rand water. And that quality is quite good at the moment.
But I mean, let's just hold on to this for a moment. That first flush of water, why exactly should we be wary of not drinking this? What are the dangers that lurk in our tap water at this point?
So for me, the primary danger of that first flash of water is the fact that our sewer systems are not intact. We don't have entire integrity over the sewer system. On any given day, you see sewers that are overflowing or running down into the street. If that water, that sewage water, is anywhere near those pipes, because it will, it seeps into the ground. So if that's anywhere near your pipe and it's able to get into your pipe, you're at risk of contamination from sewage, which has serious health complications and impacts. And those are the kinds of things we saw in Hammanskraal last year. And I'm not saying we have cholera. There's been no outbreak of that as yet, or there's no sign of it happening. But there is potential for fecal matter to contaminate our drinking water. For most people, this will be okay. I mean, if your immune system is strong and it's good, it's not a problem. But if you're slightly immunocompromised or there's something else going on, then that may not be okay. And then, of course, there are certain diseases that impact lots of people. So just as an example, cholera, about 90% of us are actually immune to cholera. We won't see it. It just goes, it's like, once you've had COVID 4 or 5 times, you shouldn't really know that you're having it. But there's 10% that are not immune, and they're really at risk from something like this. And the problem is you don't know whether you're one of the 10% or one of the 90%. So if you're concerned, boil your water. And if you've got to use that first flush, make sure you boil it for a couple of minutes again, and not just heat it up to boiling and letting it cool. Boil it for a couple of minutes. Have those bubbles going through the water.
I mean, we've been talking about water issues in Johannesburg for a while now. And I think, as far as I can remember, this has been going on for at least a year. I think it was somewhere around June last year when we realized that, wait a minute, we do have serious issues with our water, and this is finally catching up with us. These issues, of course, this doesn't just happen out of the blue. There are many factors that contribute to this, and we can go into that. But I think we've talked about this many times on various different platforms at various different points over the last year. So the immediate instinct when we run out of water, or when we hear that we're running out of water, I think would be to rush to fill bottles. But the question then, and I think you've addressed this in a recent article, is the safety of that water. How long does this water remain safe to drink?
So the problem with the question, which is exactly what you're asking, and that's why it's a really good question, is I don't know how clean your bottles were before you filled them with water. So if your bottles are sterile and you seal it and it's still sterile because it's got the chlorine, that actually could last a while. And I don't know what a while is, because you have to analyze it for it, but it can be a while. But, if you take a sip from the bottle, you've got all your mouth bacteria, which are suddenly on the bottle. There's all sorts of contamination pathways. And that means that water is no longer safe, and those bacteria can grow in the water. And now we go into that zone of uncertainty where we just don't know whether or not it's safe anymore. I would say do not save more than about a day's worth of water in a bottle. It's not necessarily a great idea, because we just have no control of the quality. And what I am recommending, and this is one of these, it's a fairly contentious issue, but if you have load shedding, one of the first things you do is you put an inverter with a battery pack in your house. If you can get a tank into your garden, that's exactly the same as a water battery. So that's a good thing to get. And you can put them with a little cistern valve, these float valves that when it's full, the valve switches off, and then that's there. But then again, you need to just keep an eye on that, and you need to keep putting chlorine into that, because there are other things that could get into there. There's bird crap, I guess. I'm using the words because it's fecal matter is fecal matter, but their fecal matter is equally hazardous to us. So unless you have that as an entirely sealed, perfectly contained system, it can get out of control again, and then you can be in the same thing. And now you're the one that's contaminating your water supply. So you do get little chlorine floaters, but again, the go-to standard, if you want to make sure your water is safe, it's either boil it for an extended period of time or use 1 teaspoon of unscented bleach for every 20 liters. And everyone says, oh, the taste is awful. And I must admit, I agree with you. The taste is awful. But for me, there's two options for this. The one is you can get seriously ill and or die, or I have water that tastes slightly off. And for me, the water that tastes slightly off is just such a simpler choice in life to make.
Mm. And just finally, water tankers, are they safe to drink as soon as they come to our streets? Do we need to boil them?
So my answer to you is I wouldn't use water from a water tanker at all. There's no ways I would do that. There's just too much evidence that these guys are not following protocols. I have no idea where that guy got his water from. I have no idea what they've done with it. We know that there's a lot of chance for that. Once that tanker's on the road, who knows where it's going or what it's doing. So I don't drink tanker water. I won't drink tanker water. I would rather buy water from the supermarket at 25 Rand for a 5-liter bottle, those things. But yeah,
Mm.
I mean, for many people, this is the only solution they have. And if that's the case, just make sure you boil it. But me personally, I won't use tanker water. I would not.
Okay. And just finally, and as quickly as possible, I guess,
Yeah.
then the best way to purify your water, is there anything else we should be doing aside from just boiling the water as well?
No, I think boiling it is really good. Using rainwater is fine, provided you boil it or you bleach it. It's, chemistry, the chemicals in the water are not really an issue for us at the moment, especially if we're looking at our freshwater systems, whether they've been on or off or any of these things. It's about the organisms that can grow in the water. So it's that old message, boil or add the bleach at 1 teaspoon for 20 liters. It's a really easy number. It's like a bucket, one of those big containers. And if you do that, you should be safe. And that's what we're after, that everyone is safe. And this applies across the world to anyone in any country. This is a method of keeping water safe and keeping people from getting seriously hurt and injured and ill.
All right. Thank you so much for that. I think that's where we'll
My
leave it
pleasure.
for today. That was Professor Craig Sheridan, Director of the Center in Water at the University of the Witwatersrand. We'll leave it at that. I mean, speaking about the quality of water amidst these ongoing water issues in Johannesburg, I think that certainly is something many would be turning their attention to, or ought to be turning their attention towards, um, as we now try to find a way forward, and while we wait for the officials to do what they need to do to make sure that we have potable water. And just a quick clarification, Professor Sheridan is the director of the Center in Water Research and Development, and that, of course, at the University of Witwatersrand. Um, yeah, let's leave it to you as the listeners. Are you confident with the water that you're drinking? Are you confident with your tap water? Do let us know. You can interact and engage with us on Facebook, on Twitter. We are also on WhatsApp. 0617660355 is the number to get in touch with us. And yeah, we'll look forward to engaging with you. Are you confident in the quality of your water?